Mr. Squidward. Welcome to the night shift.
And we welcome you guys to this special live edition of the night shift after my Buckeyes got the smackdown from Luka Garza. Man, Isaiah, there are some very, very solid Bosnian players nowadays in basketball. And man, did one of them lay the smackdown on my Buckeyes this afternoon, beating the Ohio State Buckeyes 73-57. Isaiah, this must be your crowning achievement in life, seeing Ohio State struggle in Division I sports for what feels like the first time in a long time.
Steven, oh, how the tables have turned. You're always, mocking me and mocking Michigan for having bad seasons and being second place to Ohio State and being, a very bad team when it comes to football. Well, now in basketball, it's the other way around, where Michigan is the top. They're the king of the basketball world. They are looking like, the team that nobody can beat, and also Ohio State is now third in the Big Ten. They are below Michigan, and it is just such a great sight to see. I mean, what a game that I watched today between Ohio State and Iowa. Today's game reaffirmed what me and you said last week as to why Ohio State is not going to win the Big Ten or even win the national title. It's because Ohio State is too undersized. You look at this game. Iowa jumped out to a 15-6 lead in the first 4 minutes of that basketball game, and Luka Garza lived up to his first name by putting up 12 points of Iowa's 15 points in the first 4 minutes of the game. Luka Garza was a monster against the Buckeyes today. He made it seem like he was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Shaquille O'Neal going up against a poor guard that was guarding him. That's how, that's how monstrous he looked out there on the basketball court. He was phenomenal. Ohio State tried putting E.J. Lindell on him. That didn't work. They tried putting Justice Suing on him. That didn't work. And then they tried putting Kyle Young on him. That didn't work, as Garza just had his way with the Ohio State Buckeyes today on the basketball court. And it's the same problem that we've been saying over and over and over when it comes to Ohio State. Ohio State is just too undersized. They don't have that big man that can go toe-to-toe with some of the top big mans in college basketball. That's their Achilles heel, and I believe that's what's going to end up killing them in when they falter, whether it's in the Big Ten tournament or in the NCAA tournament. It's the lack of size for Ohio State. They got dominated last week Sunday by Hunter Dickinson. This week they get dominated by Luka Garza. Ohio State just doesn't have the size to be able to compete with some of the top teams in college basketball. You can have all the great perimeter players all you want and go small all you want. But like we've seen, whether it's in the NBA with the Lakers, size still matters in basketball. And if you have a 7-foot big man going up against a 6'8" power forward, the 7-foot big man is always going to feast on that 6'8" big man like Luka Garza did today. Luka Garza was the big reason why Iowa was able to beat Ohio State today and send the Buckeyes into a 3-game losing streak, which I am so thrilled about, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, and we welcome in some live audience tuning in. Shardul Gupta saying, "Hey Isaiah, how's your evening?" I'm sure it's definitely a very, very joyous evening for this guy here, who is just so used to Ohio State dominating his teams and being better than his teams, including his Georgia Bulldogs. in college football and college basketball for that matter. Isaiah, you are such a Georgia Bulldogs fan. I wonder where that loyalty goes for college basketball.
Well, when I look at the Georgia Bulldogs, Georgia's one of the worst teams in the SEC, and I don't even know any players on the Georgia Bulldogs basketball team. So I'm not even a fan of like Georgia athletics. I'm only a fan of their football team because I know a lot of players. Like watch Jake Fromm when he was a high schooler on to college, and I've just followed him ever since then. I like Kirby Smart dating back to his days at Alabama. So that's why I follow the Georgia Bulldogs football team. But Michigan is where my true loyalty lies. I love Juwan Howard. If you guys don't know the backstory, I played NBA 2K and I scored 92 points with Juwan Howard. Steven can accept, or Steven knows that actually happened. And Juwan Howard, I rooted for him when he was on the Miami Heat, rooted for him, throughout his coaching career. I actually wanted Juwan Howard, believe it or not, to get the coaching job over Frank Vogel when the two were battling it out for the Lakers head coaching gig. It looks like it worked out well for both parties involved. But Juwan Howard, I stumped for Michigan to hire him. Michigan hired him, and they've hired one hell of a basketball coach in Juwan Howard. He's doing great things, and he's going to keep doing great things for that Michigan Wolverines program.
That they have, Isaiah. That's one thing I got to give props to Michigan for. But you have been a Michigan fan for far longer than Juwan Howard has been a Michigan Wolverine head coach. You've been a Michigan fan because of the Jim Harbaugh days and his incompetency of leading the Michigan Wolverines. So quit lying about that. But right now, guys, it is not a it's not a good week, let alone good day for college basketball for me, man. My Minnesota Golden Gophers and Ohio State Buckeyes have now combined for 5 straight losses over the past week in basketball, man. It's just not been good. Minnesota lost to Nebraska recently. They lost to Northwestern before that. Ohio State has lost to Michigan State. They've lost to Michigan, and now they've lost to Iowa. This is a team that's just filled with a lot of fluky shooting, and I'm going to get to that more, but let me get to some of the viewer comments. Callan saying, "Hey, Leung, you're being watched." Hey, Callan, if you're still tuning in, man, have you noticed how much this guy hypes up the Georgia Bulldogs during college football, and then magically he becomes the biggest Ann Arbor, Michigan fan there is to human earth during college basketball season? Like, come on. James Gonzalez commenting, "Hey, everyone." Hey, James, love to have you joining and tuning in on the show. Casey King saying, "Good evening, guys." And Shardul Gupta, the blowout win for the Iowa Hawkeyes basketball team. It's a big jolt. It was a dominating win for this organization. I definitely think so. I think this is a big, big win for the program. It's a team that also hasn't been too consistent. They're overly reliant on one player in Garza. But, Ohio State did go Higgins today, as Casey Keene mentions. And I think the big issue here, Isaiah, it's really a two-pronged thing. I think the number one thing with Ohio State is that this just proves that in college basketball, you have to put a true big man out onto the floor to win games, to win championships. But not just to win championships, to win games, let alone championships, you need to put a big man out there, a true big man. You saw how Ohio State got dominated today by Garza. He had a very easy 24 points and 11 rebounds. This was not like your Steph Curry or Klay Thompson kind of 24 points where he was shooting contested threes with hands in his face. No, he was grabbing open boards. He was sealing off the defender. Let me see if I can get my camera off. Camera on, but he was sealing off his defender, just sealing them off, getting the ball, and just easily being able to lay the ball into the hoop in the paint. It was just easy work for him all day long, and this really came down to two things. Number one, you still need true big men in college basketball. And number two, Ohio State is a team that's just overly reliant on their shooting. You look at some of these standings. Justice Suing had a decent, outstanding game. EJ Liddell was decent inside. He made some great layups. He made the opening basket, got them off to a good start. CJ Walker was okay, and Dwayne Washington was very cold from the field. The reality is when this Ohio State team starts missing three-pointers, when teams start chasing Ohio State off the three-point line, they're just not a very good or consistent basketball team. They don't play winning basketball. They don't play championship basketball when they get chased off that three-point line. And it's a big, big weakness heading into March Madness, heading into the Big Ten tournament. A couple of guys I've noticed it with is Dwayne Washington and CJ Walker. While both of these guys have very, very strong patented step back threes, they got really good open threes. They have decent floaters. I've noticed that both of these guys, when they drive into the paint, they often get very flustered by the opponent and they get stuck. They get stuck inside the paint. They don't have the ability to finish under contact like a Steph Curry at Davidson or like a true superstar. They don't have that superstar go-to guy. Liddell is a little bit of that. He's got a little bit of Paul Millsap in his game where he can stretch the floor and he can quickly get to a spot and lay the ball in. But he's not a true big man. He's undersized. It's tough for him to guard someone like Dickinson or to guard someone like Luka Garza, who, Bosnia represent. They've been putting up some great work out there recently. James Gonzalez makes a great point, though. I know I'm thinking ahead, but I wonder how Garza's game will translate in the new NBA style of play. That's a good point. One thing I noticed, Isaiah, is that in college basketball, it seems because a lot of players are undersized, a lot of players, they're still hitting the weight rooms. They're still getting their weight up there. And in terms of height, it's not as much of a height dominant league as the NBA. I've noticed that in college basketball, the implementation of the traditional big men is still very much alive. Guys like Dickinson, guys like Garza to a certain extent, and then Caleb Swanigan a few years ago at Purdue had himself pretty good seasons on the Boilermakers. And Jared Allen, who recently played for the Nets, but now he's on the Hawks. These are some traditional big guys who can dominate in the game of college because people are generally undersized. But to answer your question, James, I think Garza's game will actually translate a lot better than Dickinson's game and guys like Jarrett Allen and Caleb Swanigan, because this is a guy, he's on the Cavs. Yes. Correct me. Thanks for correcting me. Jarrett Allen is on the Cavs now. But going back to James's question, Luka Garza, his type of game is he has more finesse because his dad was a professional European player. He's Bosnian, and he has a lot more finesse to his game. He also has a consistent three-point shot, and he has really, really solid fundamentals. That's one thing I've noticed about overseas players that make it to college in the NBA. Their fundamentals are on point. So he's not a guy that purely relies on his athleticism and his physical domination as much as like a Dickinson or like a Dwight Howard or like a Jarrett Allen. So that's why I think a guy like Luka Garza, his game will translate fine to the NBA. But Isaiah, go ahead. I'm sure you have more to add about kind of Ohio State's inconsistencies when chased off that three-point line.
Well, before I get into Ohio State, I also want to, respond to James's question about Luka Garza. I saw today, I believe it was one of the mock drafts after this game was over, because I had known about Luka Garza for a long time. He has.
Yeah, you mentioned him last week as well.
Yes, I mentioned him last week when we talked about the Ohio State-Michigan game, and I said that, man, Garza's going to have a field day against Ohio State, and sure enough, he did. But Luka Garza, throughout this entire season, he's been one of the best players in all of college basketball. ESPN has been hyping him up. Fox has been hyping him up. Even CBS Sports has been hyping him up. But I've been reading a lot of mock drafts, and Luka Garza in a lot of these mock drafts isn't even projected to go in the first round. And I think that's utterly laughable, because Luka Garza, he's not like your Taco Falls or your Bobo. He's kind of like kind of like a Jokic in a way. He's big body. He can step out, shoot threes. Maybe not the like the great passer that Jokic is, but these type of big mans, there's still a place for them in the NBA. And with the numbers that Luka Garza is putting up right now, he's averaging 24 points a game. Last season, he averaged 23 points a game. And he also, this season, he's shooting 70% from the free throw line. He's shooting 30 or 44% from three, which is really high, especially for a big man. And he's also shooting 54% from the field. I think Luka Garza could maybe go in the top 10 to top 15. And I think that people that pass on him, they would be foolish to pass on him if they do have a big man need. This guy can he does his damage in the paint. He can step out, shoot the three. He's a solid passer, not the greatest passer in the world, but he can still work on that. He's got good fundamentals, and also, most importantly, is with his height and with his athleticism and with the way that he's built, he can step in there and protect the paint, something that you saw a lot of today against Ohio State. So I think Luka Garza deserves top 10 consideration. I think that teams would be foolish not to pick him in the top 10. But in terms of Ohio State, Steven, this is why I think Ohio State's not going to make it that far, in the tournament, is because a lot of these teams like a Gonzaga and also, North Carolina and other teams like that, they have like really good big men. And if you're gonna put guys like Kyle Young, who's 6'8", EJ Lindell, who's not your typical big man, and Justice Suing, who I think is more of a forward instead of a big man, if you're gonna put those three guys on one of the best bigs in the nation, that big is just going to keep eating every single minute in the paint and hurting Ohio State. That's free baskets right there against Ohio State. So let's say your shot is not falling from three. You can't defend the paint. You're screwed. So I think that's Ohio State's biggest problem. In terms of how I think they can fix it, I don't believe they can, because it's not like the NBA.
I don't think so.
Yeah, you can go and trade for a player. Like, you can't trade in college basketball. So you have to go out and recruit, but it's already too late to recruit. So Ohio State has to, work with what they've got, and they just don't have that big of a team right now in Columbus.
Yes. I think that this Ohio State team, like I said, I think the biggest issue is that Dwayne Washington and CJ Walker are two of your prominent scorers, and same with Liddell. What do they all share in common? All of these guys are undersized. They're not very big. Once you chase this Ohio State team off the three-point line, I'm sorry, they just aren't very good at finishing under contact. You're never going to see CJ Walker, just run up and just dunk over opponents. You're not going to see Dwayne Washington dunk over opponents. Even Liddell, he can make some open dunks, but he's not posterizing anyone. This is just an Ohio State team that isn't that physical. They're not that big. They're undersized. And small ball just doesn't translate well to college basketball just yet. I think they're not there compared to the NBA, because while the NBA definition of small is like under 6'7" and everything, right? Like Draymond Green is considered small in the NBA. But in college, small is a whole different definition. Like Walker and Dwayne Washington, man, they're like barely 6'2", 6'3", and they're just not posterizing anyone. They're not finishing under contact like a Steph Curry or anything. And so once they get off that three-point line, Walker does have that silky smooth mid-range. He does have an amazing free throw shoot. He does have amazing free throw shooting. Absolutely electric from the mid-range and free throw line. But once you chase them off those open jump shots, they just don't have an interior game. They don't have that elite interior game, which is necessary to carry you forward when defenses tighten up in March and you really have to be diligent and crashing the boards and playing high effort. They can't run with that high motor. Ishmael commenting here, don't forget, Garza is 6'11", 265 right now. He's already NBA size. And that's not the thing that we're pointing out, Ishmael. We're saying that in college, Garza and a lot of big men are more able to utilize their size to their advantage, because so many college players are just simply not 6'11", 265. But in the NBA, a lot of players are above 6'7", above 6'10". There's a lot of 7-footers in the NBA, so his size won't be as big of an advantage in the pros. However, Garza is a guy who he is like Jokic. He relies on his fundamentals rather than his raw athleticism to get to the basket and to score. So he's a guy, he can stretch the defense. He's very, very diligent on working his game. That's how he can translate to college basketball. But anyway, Isaiah, before we move on, we did have a viewer private message me, man. For what it's worth, your haircut sucks, man. That's what he said. So get off that ugly haircut, man.
I wonder who that was. I really wonder who that was. But obviously, we're not gonna, expose people live on the show. But I really do wonder who that was.
All right, I private message it to you. Don't say live on air. I think we're just gonna let that one swing by. But going on to our predictions for the rest of the season, let's start with Iowa. This is a team that's been red hot recently. I'm gonna go ahead and share the rest of their schedule over here. Looks like they just have number 23 Wisconsin coming in next Sunday. I'll be over at the zoo actually. Won't be able to see that game, but that game coming at you on Sunday. Iowa's at home against Wisconsin, and then also on Thursday. Whoops, didn't see that. 6 p.m. they have Nebraska at home. Isaiah, I see them disposing of both of these teams pretty handily, with the size of Luka Garza and everything, and his red hot scoring recently. He's averaging 24 a game. I see them having no problems taking both of these teams down, and I think that they're not going to have any trouble or any adversity until the Big Ten tourney. Actually, I don't know. I'm still gonna stick with my Ohio State wins the Big Ten tourney prediction. But if not Ohio State, I think Iowa has a very strong shot. How do you see the rest of Iowa's season playing through?
Well, I think that you're right in terms of they're going to whoop Nebraska because Nebraska's just not a good basketball team. They are rebuilding right now under former Bulls head coach Fred Hoiberg, who's in his second year with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. So Nebraska's rebuilding. I think Iowa easily dismantles Nebraska. And then the game on Sunday, I wouldn't say that Iowa would easily win because Wisconsin is one of the tough teams in all of college basketball. They always put up a fight. So I think that it will be a close game. But I would say that I think Iowa wins that as well. But I would say Iowa wins it probably by like 5 or 6 points, something in that range. But, Stephen, one more thing about this Iowa team that we forgot to mention is this Iowa team – I believe could have some success in the Big Ten tournament because they remind me a lot of the Dwight Howard Orlando Magic. You remember the Dwight Howard Orlando Magic where they had that one dominant big man in the middle, and when teams would focus their attention and put like 2 guys or 3 guys to go help and guard Dwight Howard, what would Dwight Howard do? He would kick it out to the shooters that the Magic had around him in the perimeter. That is what Iowa really reminds me of. I mean, when you look at today's game against Ohio State, Garza was the one that was putting in a lot of work, but it wasn't just him. Joe Wieskamp, he was tremendous from 3. Jordan Bohannon, he reminds me a lot of Jameer Nelson in terms of dishing out the basketball and making the right reads and also shooting the basketball. Connor McCaffrey had also a pretty decent shooting day. And you just look at this Iowa team, it's Garza in the middle. He's the star, but they do have a great supporting cast around him who can, he can pass it out to them and they can knock down triples, which makes Iowa a very dangerous team in my opinion.
All right. Do you see this Iowa basketball team as a Final Four team? Because I'm pretty convinced. I think I do see them as a Final Four team.
No, I don't, because I think that the problem with Iowa is that when they play like against the best teams in the conference, like a Michigan, even though I think Michigan is like levels above everyone else in the Big Ten. And it's not because I like Michigan. It's just that Michigan has dominated recently over like all of their opponents. I just think Iowa Even though they have that great big man in Luka Garza who can match up well, their shooters are very inconsistent and streaky. But like today, there were a lot of times that you were just like, why did that guy like not hit that? He was wide open. Why did that other guy, he was wide open so many times and he not hit that? So you can have like that. You can play that Orlando Magic style where you have that big man and he gets doubled and he kicks it out. But if your shooter's not knocking down threes, then you're still going to lose either way. So I wouldn't say they're a Final Four team just because their shooters are just way too streaky.
All right. You had some stuff to say about – okay, actually, before – oh, yeah, I did. I got my take on it. I think they are a Final Four team for the reasons you mentioned of like the Dwight Howard Orlando Magic factor. And I also think true big men in college are a lot more useful than in the NBA. I think the era of the small ball still hasn't quite touched college yet. Ohio State has tried it. They've been toasted the past 3 games, man, frankly. I mean, I understand like the game against Michigan State, you want to like blame the refs and claim you got robbed, but you can't give up a 9-point lead late in the second period against a Michigan State team that is very, very average and middling and rebuilding and everything. So I think that Ohio State, they've tried the small ball. It's not quite ready for college ball just yet. But you wanted to give your take on Indiana. Go ahead.
Yeah, my take on Indiana, Steven, if you could.
By the way, earlier in the year, they did beat Iowa by 2 points in a very impressive win.
Yeah, they did. But if you could pull up Indiana's record, that would be much appreciated. But the thing I need to say about Indiana, and I also said this last night on the night shift, is that Indiana's head coach, Archie
Miller. They are 12
Miller,
and 13, guys.
Yes, Indiana's right now 12 and 13. They lost badly last night to Michigan, but that's not really that bad of a loss considering everybody's getting whooped by Michigan these days. But still, Archie Miller, the head coach of Indiana, needs to go. Indiana, they had Tom Crean there for many, many years as their head coach. They fired him because Tom Crean was bringing in good results, but not good enough for Indiana standards. Indiana, they want to be this like powerhouse basketball program like the Dukes, the Kentuckys, the Kansases of the world, and where Michigan is right now. They want to be at that level. But right now, Indiana, they're just, teetering on mediocrity. That's where Indiana is. They're nowhere near close to that greatness.
Dude, they're not even as good as Minnesota, man.
Yeah, they're not even as good as Minnesota. They've just really inconsistent. They're one of the worst shooting teams in all of college basketball, and that's been the case for 4 years. Like you can't tell me that fine, 1 year you have a bad shooting year. Okay, we'll let that go. But 4 years of bad shooting, that's on the coach. If you're having bad shootings for 4 years, then you need to hire someone to help your players shoot the basketball. Hire a shooting coach or something, or run better offensive sets or whatever. So Archie Miller, I'm blaming him because I think right now Indiana is like Texas in college football, where they think that they should be really up there, but that's what the fans think. But their program is actually down here, and they're on the brink, or they're on the level of mediocrity. And right now, not Texas, Indiana, they had something good in Tom Crean. They fired him to try to get great results, but Archie Miller hasn't made the tournament in the 4 years he's been there. They've been one of the worst shooting teams, like I said, for the 4 years that he's been there each year. And now they're 12 and 13. And 4 years, I think, is enough time to say whether or not a coach is good enough or not with the program. So Archie Miller, in my opinion, he needs to go. Indiana needs to move in a different direction if they do want to go to that greatness level that that program strives to be. And one name that I will throw out that I think will be very interesting, and a lot of people in the Big Ten, they know this name, John Beilein, former head coach at Michigan, also the former Cavaliers head coach, did a lot of great things at Michigan. I think John Beilein would be that hire that could lift Indiana.
Brought them to the national title.
Yes, he brought them to the national title twice. So He's a guy that's proven. He's got championship experience. Indiana, if they want to be great and not be mediocre, John Beilein is your hire, and I would fire Archie Miller right now on the spot to go get John Beilein.
Yep, Austin Morrison chiming in. Indiana needs to bring in John Beilein. Couldn't agree more. I agree, Isaiah. I think that college coaches often they get a much longer leash than pro coaches. Like in NBA and NFL, you're very much hired to get fired. That's why a guy like John Beilein got the axe so quickly on the Cavs team, which, by the way, is now showing playoff potential or team potential as a playoff team, as they had a very, very interesting and impressive victory over the 76ers on Friday. But I just think this Indiana team, they're a former blue blood of basketball from many, many years ago, but I think it's tough for them to recruit, quite frankly, with Purdue right next door in Indiana. And then nearby, you have rising teams like Ohio State. You have teams like Michigan who can take talent from you. And even Illinois. Illinois was not expected to be this good so soon. How about the rebuilding job that they have done? I just think it's a very, very tough time if you're Indiana geographically to be recruiting right now, because the Big Ten is the best conference in college basketball, quite frankly. This is a very tough conference to play and to recruit in right now. And frankly, Isaiah, I know you are going to have a lot of enjoyment out of this, but I think Michigan is the best team in the country. Their only loss was a double-digit blowout loss to Minnesota very, very early on in the season, when they're still discovering themselves. January 16th, they lost by 18 to Minnesota. But ever since then, it's been smooth sailing, and not just crunch it out games. They've been winning all these games by double digits, minus the Ohio State game and the Rutgers game. They've been dominating their opponents, and the Wisconsin game. They've just looked so much more impressive than all the other teams in the Big Ten who have been inconsistent in their shooting. They've been inconsistent in maybe their post defense or avoiding fouling. This is a Michigan team that is the best team in the country right now. They're clicking on all cylinders. And when you have all that talent in one conference near your state and in your state in a Purdue, I just think it's a tough spot to be if you're Indiana. I'm not sure if John Beilein can go in there and fix them, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. By the way, Purdue having a 21-point victory over Penn State on Friday. They're looking good at 16-8. They're looking like a team that could be getting hot at the right time.
But, Steven, Penn State, though, is not really that good of a basketball team. So I think that we should take that victory, with a grain of salt. Like, I want to see, how Purdue does against, Wisconsin. That would be like the true litmus test for me.
Yeah, agreed. Ishmael saying another interesting name is if the Boston Celtics fire him, Brad Stevens, to Indiana. He was a very, very successful coach at Butler. Remember, he had those back-to-back national title appearances. One of them where Gordon Hayward missed the half-court buzzer beater, and another of them being a 53-41 loss to the Kemba Walker-led UConn Huskies.
What I'll say about that, though, is I like that idea, but do you really think Brad Stevens, if the Celtics somehow fire him, right? And there's talk that they might, because they were on a really bad losing streak recently. But if the Celtics do fire Brad Stevens, I don't believe that he will, go back to college. I think that he's much rather prefer the NBA, in which he doesn't have to recruit and he can just stick to coaching basketball instead of going back to college where he has to recruit and, go to Indiana, which you're in the middle of like a loaded Big Ten with Michigan. You know what they're about. Michigan State, you can never count Tom Izzo and Sparty out. Ohio State, I think that even though they're not looking that good right now, I still think Ohio State will be back next season. Iowa, if Garza comes back, the Big Ten is just loaded. And I don't think Brad Stevens, even though I think Indiana would offer him loads and loads of money to come to Indiana to be their head coach, if he is available, I just don't think he will turn down the NBA, who will be offering him a lot of money and also maybe front office power if an NBA team or if the Celtics do in fact fire him.
So for many of the same reasons that I listed why Indiana is simply not good, you use those same reasons to justify Brad Stevens not coming to Indiana.
Yeah.
Isaiah, I'm just going to come out and say it. And this is going to be some ugly words about this Indiana program. But Indiana is to basketball what Nebraska is to football. They are a has-been blue blood. They are a has-been blue chip. You hear about blue bloods in college football and basketball. You hear about blue chip stocks. They are a has-been. They just simply cannot compete with a burgeoning and up-and-coming Big Ten conference in terms of recruiting and in terms of playing the game now. They are just Nebraska of college basketball.
I would say they're more Texas because they did make the NCAA tournament before Archie Miller got to IU, and they do have some.
But 64 teams make it, Isaiah.
That is true, but I think that they could turn it around, but it's about making the right hire. I never thought that Archie Miller was the right hire to replace Tom Crean. I mean, Archie Miller, the guy was at Dayton. He did some good things at Dayton, but come on, that's Dayton compared to Indiana. And I think Archie Miller, he's just famous because he's related to Sean Miller, who's the legendary head coach at Arizona. Even though he did a lot of good things at Dayton, I never really thought of Archie Miller as that great of a coach. I thought IU really made the wrong hire, and they need him. If they do fire Archie Miller after the season is over, they got to go big game hunting. You got to go John Beilein. You got to go Brad Stevens if he's available. You got to go big game hunting. You can't go for some coach that, even though he's doing great things at a small program, you can't go there anymore. You can't take risk on a young up-and-coming coach. No, it's time to go big game hunting and hire a proven championship commodity.
Well, hopefully that proven coach will see Indiana as something better than what I see it as. I just see it as a has-been, Isaiah, in a loaded, up-and-coming conference in college basketball, and it's going to be tough to recruit talent. It's going to be tough to win games. This is a long-term project that is going to take a long, long time to just to develop. It's going to take a long time to bring it back to where it was. But Casey King brings up a good point. He's agreeing with you. If Brad Stevens does end up leaving the Celtics, he would try for another NBA job before he goes back to college. He thinks maybe Sacramento. Isaiah, by the way, if Brad Stevens does in fact go to Sacramento, man, me and you and maybe Shree, we got to take a trip over to Sacramento when COVID ends and catch a Sacramento Kings game, man, because first of all, the tickets are cheaper. Second of all, we could finally go to that sinkhole in Napa that you wanted to see with me. I can pay up on that bet. But also, Brad Stevens, he's an excellent coach, and I think he'd make great use of Buddy Hield and De'Aaron Fox.
1000% agreed, man. Brad Stevens is miles ahead of Luke Walton as a head coach. I don't even know why. I know we're supposed to be talking college basketball, but I don't know why Luke Walton still has a job in Sacramento. The Kings went on a 9-game losing streak, and in that 9-game losing streak, Steven, hear this out. They gave up 128 points, 133 points, 130 points, 125
You got it. Memories.
107 points, 118 points, 136 points, 123 points, and then 140 to the New York Knicks. Luke Walton should have been fired after that loss to the Knicks. I don't even know why he still currently has a job in the NBA.
Hey, Isaiah, you think that Ohio State defense could play better defense than Brad Stevens' Kings?
You mean Luke Walton's Kings? Absolutely.
Oh, sorry. Luke Walton's Kings.
Absolutely.
My bad.
Luke Walton's Kings don't even play defense, dude. I guarantee you, if we had like a five-man starting lineup here on the MI6 Sports Network of me, you, Callan, Trevor, and Shree, I think we could score like a bunch of points against that Sacramento Kings defense. They just don't play defense in Sacramento.
Another thing, I don't think we'll have time to dive into it, but Casey King brings up a good point. Another college coach who could be on the hot seat is Andy Enfield of the Trojans. He should be, because the last few years, USC just seems to fall apart down the stretch. And that's what they're doing right now. They're losing with talent that they shouldn't be losing with right now. And Casey saying, if Brad Stevens goes to the Kings, I would be happy to join you guys for a game in Sacramento. Casey, let's go, man. I turn on my camera, but I'm having some connectivity issues. But here's my auditorial, or yes, here's my fist bump, my auditorial fist bump to you. Let's go to the Sacramento Kings if Brad Stevens does, in fact, end up in Sacramento. That'd be amazing. But going over to the Ohio State Buckeyes now, I want to really dive into our last segment here. They've got a very, very important momentum-building matchup next Saturday at 1 at home in the Schottenstein Center against a up-and-coming Illinois team. How do you see this one playing out, and how do you see their Big Ten tourney and March Madness hopes playing out?
Well, about this game first, before I get into the Big Ten tournament and March Madness, Illinois basketball, like you said, Steven, they're on the up and coming. I mean, they're fifth right now in all of college basketball. They're second in the Big Ten behind Michigan, whom they're going to face on Tuesday, which is going to be one hell of a game because you got number 5 Illinois. I think they're going to move up one spot because Baylor just lost. So Baylor's probably going to be dropping out of the top 5 after losing to number 17 Kansas. So in Illinois is going to move up to 4. Michigan's going to be 2. I mean, you got number 4 versus number 2. I can't wait for that. But in terms of this matchup, I'm going to go – listen, even though I hate Ohio State, right? I really do hate Ohio State. I'm going to say that I believe that Ohio State wins this game because I think they have that experience playing in big games. Plus, Ohio State's coming off a 3-game losing streak, and you cannot let it get to 4. Because if you let it get to 4, it won't affect you, in terms of if you're going to make the tournament, but it's going to affect you in terms of your seeding for the Big Ten tournament. And you don't want to be playing, if Ohio State drops to, I don't know, I don't think they would drop to the 7th seed, but if they drop to like maybe the 5th seed or something, Ohio State should not want to play like Iowa or a team that has like a great big man that could dominate them in the middle. So that is what I would say. I think Ohio State comes out with a vengeance to try to snap that 3-game losing streak, and they play with better passion and more fire to try to avoid dropping even more and trying to avoid going into a rut before the Big Ten tournament.
Isaiah, I think Ohio State drops this game. I think they lose 4 games in a row, man. They are a stock that I'm selling. I still think they're going to go far in the Big Ten tourney. And I don't know, just hear me out on this one, man. I think it's just like a momentum thing. They're really running out of steam here. They're not playing winning basketball. They're just not defending down low. They're trying to get too fancy with all the small ball and the threes. I think the Fighting Illini, Chardol, I think they beat Ohio State. I think my brother's school beats up on my school. And this is just a team that's kind of plunging down. And I think I had said that they're an Elite 8 team for sure. Now I'm not so sure. I think this is a team that makes it far in the Big Ten tournament after they've had some rest to really recuperate. I think they're a little burnt out. But I think that it's not a team that can make it too far in the March Madness tournament. I see now the Elite 8 as their ceiling with how they're playing. And I would not be surprised if they were knocked out in either the Sweet 16 or round of 32.
Steven, I'll say this. Ohio State, we've been talking all night about Ohio State having issues with great big man. Hunter Dickinson, Luca Garza. Well, guess what? Illinois has one of the best big men in college basketball. His name is Kofi Cockburn. Just like Austin Morrison said, this guy's 7 feet tall. He is dominant when it comes to the interior. He's a shot blocking presence. This guy is just amazing. And he, I think, would give Ohio State a lot of trouble down low because, like we said, Kyle Young can't. He's too undersized. EJ Lindell undersized, and also Justice Sewing undersized, and you're going up against a 7-footer now in Kofi Cockburn after only going up against a Luca Garza who's 6'11", and Hunter Dickinson as well. I think Kofi Cockburn has a field day against Ohio State on I believe the game is on Saturday. Yep, Saturday.
All right. Before we go off to our final thoughts, Isaiah, I want to pose this question to you and to the audience. Do you guys think that if Ohio State loses this game at home in the shot against Illinois, that their season is over?
Listen, I wouldn't say their season is over, like if they lose this game, because I never expected them to win the Big Ten. I've always thought that Ohio State, the missing ingredient for the Buckeyes is that big. Like we've been saying all night, they just don't have that big that can go toe-to-toe with some of the best big mans in the nation. So I've always thought of Ohio State as a team that would probably get knocked out maybe in the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament. But for me, Ohio State, when it comes to the national, the March Madness tournament, I see them being maybe a Sweet 16 out in the NCAA tournament. I really don't see them going that far, considering early on in the tournament when you're playing Weber State or Citadel or whatever in the first couple of rounds, you're going to be playing teams that don't really have that much talent as you. But as you go deeper into the tournament, we're talking Sweet 16, Elite 8, you're going to start running into potentially Duke and North Carolina. Those teams make it, and other teams that just have good big men that can dominate Ohio State in the interior. So no, I think that even if you lose this game, I don't think the season is over, because I think Ohio State's going to make the tournament. I just think they're going to be early out in the tournament.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, I don't think they'll miss the tournament if they lose this game, but I think losing this game could be a big step towards not showing up well in the Big Ten tourney, and then subsequently even getting knocked out in the first round, as Casey said, in the NCAA tournament. So I think this is a huge momentum game, Isaiah. I think this is a game that if they win, I think they're for sure going to make a big run in the Big Ten tourney and March Madness. But if they lose this game, everything's really up in the air. And this is going to be like an on-fire moment. Like we excuse them for the Michigan loss. Like we blamed it on the fact that Michigan is a phenomenal team. They're the best team in the country. At that time, I only thought of them as like maybe the second best, but one of the best teams in the country, right? Then the Michigan State game, we talked about the refs, but then they got dominated thoroughly against Iowa today, man, and they went cold from 3. If they lose this game, man, there's just no more excuses left for this Buckeyes team.
Well, first of all, Steven, are you ready to retract your prediction that you made last week after our Ohio State post-game show that Ohio State is going to win the Big Ten tournament over Michigan? You did say that. We might have to put that clip and send it to Freezing Code Takes over there on Twitter. But, Ohio State, like we've said all along, they have a missing ingredient. This is when you look at this team, you just don't look at this team as a team that can compete for a national title. They're not on the Michigan level. They're not even on Gonzaga's level. They're a team that will make the tournament, but they're a team that, probably get knocked out. Maybe in the second round of the tournament, but I think Sweet 16 is their ceiling.
Fair enough, man. But with that being said, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this show, and we're going to close out with our final thoughts. Excellent program, Isaiah. It's getting to be that time for me, man. I got to be up tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. For my conference meeting, for my work schedule and everything. Um, Working on some exciting things at Amped Innovation right now. I'm already a manufacturing operations manager, so got a great week to look forward to. And by the way, Isaiah, don't be rubbing in this loss to me too much, man, because I'll be honest with you, man. I only caught the first half of the game. I caught the second half through some highlights and everything, and I was just too busy playing some real basketball, Isaiah, knocking down those cold hard threes. My shot has been just absolutely phenomenal recently, man. I hit 6 threes today at Old Mission Park, so I've been busy playing some real ball, man, and doing what Ohio State couldn't do against Iowa and Michigan.
Well, Steven, you can knock all the threes that you want, but at the end of the day, I'm like Luca Garza compared to your Ohio State Kyle Young, EJ Lindell, where I just bully you in the paint and
Okay,
get
man.
buckets that I want. So you can go work on your threes and hit all the threes you want, but you can't beat me in the post. But
I think the last time we played, I won like 11-4. So,
how
all right.
about tell them about 7-0? You remember that?
On a 6-foot hoop. All right, man. You beat me one time out of 15 times. Congratulations.
But before I get into my final thoughts, obviously want to thank Chardot, want to thank Casey, want to thank Austin Morrison, as well as Ishmael, and also I believe James Gonzalez also tuned in tonight. Yes, James Gonzalez tuned in as well, and Callum McClurg for taking time out of his busy schedule to join us. We really, really appreciate all of you guys for tuning in and for the love and the support. But my final thoughts is, I can't wait for the Big Ten tournament, which I believe is coming in 2 weeks. It's going to be so much fun. Like I never do this. I never ever do this because I just hate Ohio State with all my guts. But Stephen, here you better listen closely to this. I am actually going to be rooting for Ohio State in the tournament, not the March Madness, but the Big Ten tournament, so they can face Michigan in the final. I'm not going to let Ohio State lose before Michigan. I want Ohio State in the final so that after Michigan beats Ohio State by 20 to 30 points, you, Trevor, Shree, and all the Ohio State alums have to come live for our Ohio State-Michigan Big Ten final show right before Selection Sunday, and I can gloat about how Michigan's the best team in all of college basketball. So that's going to happen. That's going to happen. So hopefully the Buckeyes.
They are the best team. You're not even getting any satisfaction from me. They are the best team.
Thank you for admitting that, and now we can use that against you when it comes to football season as well. But also, one last final thought I have for tonight is that we've got a big announcement for you guys, and that is, me and Steven started this network about, I would say, like last year, right when the lockdown started and the pandemic started. We started it on March 20th of 2020. That was our first ever quarantine chat episode. And, to go from that to all of this that's been going on, we are going to be doing a 1-year anniversary special on Saturday, March 20th at approximately 7:30 p.m. Pacific time or 8 p.m. Pacific time. We don't have the time nailed down yet, but everybody on the network will be coming on, and we'll talk NFL free agency. We're going to talk college basketball because March Madness will be. We're going to talk baseball, and also, most importantly, we're going to talk about the year that it's been on the network. So make sure you guys save that date and tune in for that show. It's going to be a phenomenal show.
Yes! 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 You like that? You like that?
I do like that, Isaiah. That is going to be a phenomenal show. But with that being said, guys, we're going to wrap it up here from the Night Shift and the MI6 Sports Network. It was a pleasure joining you guys once again. It was a pleasure talking about Ohio State basketball, but got to be up bright and early tomorrow, and then maybe tomorrow night I'll get some more shots in, Isaiah, and show Ohio State how it's done.
Hey, I will show you how it's done. Hold that L.
Oh. All right, man. It's too late for that. Good night, guys.